All right.
Oh,
Shit. This is turned down really low. I can't.
I
can hear you pretty clear. Where are
Me?
you?
I'm yellow. Hello. Okay, that's
Yeah, he said we're live.
Oh, we're live.
All right. Hello, my fellow hemp nuts. Are you ready for the cannabis bonanza?
Woo!
Welcome to the new Hemp Times show, recorded at Gotham Studios, the sweetest smelling podcast studio in the world. Today's episode is partially powered by McSorley's Chili Dogs, McSorley Ale House, the oldest ale house in the United States, also powered by Five and Dime's Old Fashions, handcrafted by Aaron.
Thank God for that. Thank you, Aaron. I totally needed you today. Thank you.
We have a fun show for you today. Our word of the day is tinctures. We'll be discussing research on the Lancet article on psychosis and cannabis that just came out. We'll, of course, test your knowledge of recent cannabis news and science, and time permitting, we'll provide a Q&A about PTSD, cannabis, hemp, and other issues facing the industry.
Lots of stuff.
We are joined, as usual, by Jan Roberts, our resident clinician at LCSW and CEO of the International Research Center on Cannabis and Mental Health.
Thank you, Jay Han. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
I can barely hear myself right now. I don't know. Maybe if I'm going deaf.
Turn it up.
Turn it up.
Also joined to my right is the unapologetic farmer, Randy Cameron Jr.
Why is he unapologetic?
Because I grow whatever the hell I want to.
As the CEO of Brooklyn Sprouts Social Enterprises, he engages in one of the most radical acts you can. That's growing your own food in an urban environment, own food and medicine.
That's right.
That's perfect.
Working with Interfaith Medical Center, hoping to integrate it into insurance and things like that. And from HBO's Crashing, performing every week in Manhattan, living the dream, Greer Barnes.
That's
Woo!
Greer Barnes.
Greer Barnes.
In the lab.
Hey, when are you going to Vegas?
I think in like 2 weeks. 3
Okay.
weeks? 15th. The 15th, is it?
How the hell do you know his schedule more than he knows his own schedule?
Because I probably told him and I forget. As soon as I find out, I just know I have a date, and it's like I'll start to remember as I get closer.
Oh, you guys are nuts.
All right.
And what about you, Jayhan? How are you doing, buddy?
Dr. J.
Oh, yes. He's like our
Single
spin
row.
master tonight, or a substitute teacher.
Good. I have to say, it's been
all of the above.
over the last week. It's just been a bumper crop of weird research and news headlines. There's lots of stuff going on.
Really?
Yes, but that has nothing to do with how you are. How are you?
Well, that stuff makes me happy. I'm doing well.
Good. All right, don't forget.
All
We're
right.
supposed to be in airplane
So
mode.
let's start with the word of the day, because this is
I want to know what this word means. I've never heard of it before.
So tinctures,
Are you
right?
serious?
Yeah.
What is it?
Tincture.
You have never heard
Tinks.
tincture?
What in the vapor?
No. So
We're gonna learn something.
what is a tincture, you may ask?
John's about to just get all over us. I can hear it already. You're embarrassing us. I don't remember.
So this is the most simplest way to explain it, is that these are liquid extracts made from herbs that you take by mouth, right? So they're usually extracted in alcohol, but they can be extracted in glycerin or apple cider or other things. They're traditionally easy and convenient to use. They're also easier to generally administer, and they're usually taken under the tongue, so it gets absorbed, goes right to the brain. Not typically. Sometimes they can be swallowed.
Yep.
But they can also be added to things like tea and with honey and things like that. But how it relates to cannabis is that in the 19th century, this Irish surgeon William O'Shaughnessy's, reintroduced the use of cannabis from India into Western medicine, largely in the form of these ethanolic tinctures. And it became part of the Western pharmacopoeia, the Western medicine, up until about the 1930s. And also in the second half of the 19th century, we saw a lot of companies develop medicines that had cannabis. One of my favorite has like chloroform cannabis and like morphine in it. Arguably more effective than any sleep aid we have. But companies.
So what are they doing? Surgery on people? Knocking people out.
Well, that was actually a big thing about why morphine and these things were so important. Is like when part of the reason Darwin became who he was and like went on the Beagle.
He was getting high.
There was no anesthesia for surgery, and his father was a surgeon. He's like, I can't really stand the screams of these people while we're operating on them, so I'm going to go on a ship and collect birds and things like that.
And we also know what the Chinese word for anesthesia is.
We heard this.
Do you not remember this one?
Wait.
You don't remember this one? This is a Jayhan word. What is it called again, Jayhan? He can't even.
Mahui.
Mahui.
Yeah.
That's not real.
Yeah, the
Yeah, it
Chinese
was the
word
word of the
for
day.
anesthesia means cannabis intoxication because they've been
that's
using it for
right.
That's
thousands
right.
of
Oh,
years.
so maybe
How do
Greer-
you pronounce it?
Greer might not have been here for that.
No,
Yeah,
I thought I was here.
Yeah, he was here for
Oh,
that.
okay.
I don't know. I don't speak Mandarin, so I'm butchering it.
What'd you call it? Yahoo!
Ma is the Chinese.
Mahui.
Mahui.
All right.
I don't think
All
it's Arabic, but that's okay.
Ma.
But
Okay.
the
Once again, we got off
The
topic.
important thing is that we saw this explosion of cannabis ethanolic preparations with other things in them. Merck made them, Burroughs Wellcome made them, Bristol Myers Squibb made them, Park Davis and Eli Lilly all made ethanolic preparations that contained cannabis up until like the 40s or so. These were available. And one of the reasons why you want to use alcohol to make herbal preparations is, unlike using other stuff, they can breed bacterial stuff. Like if you have ethanol in there, it won't prevent it. And I remember once I was talking to a medical school and they were looking over my slides for the presentation and they saw this thing about tinctures and ethanol. And they're like, oh, no, alcohol should never be taken with other drugs.
Yeah.
And I had to explain to pharmacists that in a dose from a tincture is about as much alcohol that there's in a ripe banana. So you're not like
Really?
dosing a ton of alcohol when you're
Alcohol.
taking a
see.
tincture.
So just
Because it
quickly-
tastes like you are in a way.
Well,
you know?
it's strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Feels it.
and this
It has
yeah.
like a shot taste to it, right?
yeah, it's a little earthy, I'd say. And if you use too much of it, pure ethanol can like cause blisters in the mouth, which is something they've seen with a licensed pharmaceutical preparation. That's basically a tincture with a nozzle spray known as Sativex, a product we've talked about a lot on the show. It's basically a tincture that has a little spray nozzle on it, and it's licensed in 30 countries. It's been used in a ton of research. Tinctures are still very popular preparations for cannabis to this day.
Yeah.
So just compared extracting from a liquid fat like oil, is that healthier or is it
I think that that's actually a question that has come up: is should cannabis products list their lipid content on the label, because there are fats and things from the plant as well, from the waxes and things.
Oh, really?
And also if you're adding more fat to that. But yeah, like THC and these other things, they're like fats essentially, and they love to be dissolved in other fats. So that can be efficient, but again, you're going to have some really good quality control because ethanol will kill all the bacteria and the bugs. Like even if Sativex, they're making it and there's some bugs in the plants, they're getting dissolved in the ethanol.
Right.
Versus if it might culture stuff if it's a little sugary or something like that. But
So have either of you ever used tinctures?
No,
I guess not if you did.
Yeah,
not even of lavender oil, like trying to get the sleep.
no, I've never used lavender.
I have a
oils.
hard time like keeping it under the tongue.
Yeah.
It just wants to like swish up there and stuff. I don't.
Well,
like
you're
that.
supposed to swallow it eventually, right?
Yeah, but
Well,
Go
at the
ahead.
juice bar, they have tinctures mixed into some of those shots.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right.
that's
a good
point.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
where.
In mixology.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's back in the day where
What you talking about?
you did that.
we had a wine from there that had a cut in it. That's
Oh yeah.
Wait,
yeah,
what
yeah.
kind of cut?
it was a tincture cut in this wine that was sold
Cut
at
with
it was
THC.
cut with THC.
Uh-huh.
And then it had other herbs that they give
Like
Blended
some
into
like
yeah.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that.
And alcohol also acts as an effective preservative for these parts. They can be stable, stored for a long time. That's one of the other
really?
advantages, and why traditional tincture making hasn't quite given way to people using glycerin or honey.
And it's also useful for people who have like conditions that they can't vape or smoke or anything like that. So
Right.
there's actually a medicinal reason why people prefer tinctures. I know last time
Does it always have to be taken orally though? I mean,
or anally or vaginally, like we talked about
We'll
last
take
time.
it.
Sounds like it would sting.
I'll go with the oral, thank you.
I'll take a shot.
Sorry, I'm fine, Randy. Just kidding.
Well, it does give some versatility to how you administer medicine.
Sorry. Oh my God. Well, remember, wait,
Oh,
you know what we haven't done yet, though? And I hate to kind of stop you in the middle of this, but we haven't thanked our lovely fan and listener in Boston, Massachusetts. Her name is Amanda. Amanda. She's streaming live right now in Boston. So thank you, Amanda, for sending your comments. If you have any questions or anybody else listening to us right now, because it looks like a few people are already watching us, shoot us a little text on Facebook Live so that we can answer your questions. So anyway, sorry, Jehan.
Thanks for the shout out to our listeners. Yeah,
from Boston.
So the next thing I want to touch upon is something that probably upset a couple people, but I don't know if you guys got the homework assignment I sent you about the Lancet article.
I got it.
I read it.
So New York Post put this article out there with this sort of misleading headline that daily marijuana use linked with higher risk of psychosis, according to a study. Now, before I disentangle it and demystify it, I want to hear some of you guys' initial responses, because this was covered by NPR, Rolling Stone, The Hill, and a couple other outlets.
Yeah, I saw it in the Daily News.
Yeah.
I think I'm pitting out over here, sorry. But I have a thing here. I'm wondering what the hell is behind this push right now. I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist.
The tobacco company.
But there is I don't think it's the tobacco company. But well, just hold on. We're starting to see a huge, with Alex Berenson's book, we're starting to see a huge influx of articles that we've read this kind of shit for years in kind of psychology journals about, does cannabis impact psychosis?
Yeah.
And it's the same shit that they're regurgitating, and people are buying it. And so what I'm seeing right now, ever since Berenson's media blitz and his book, is that now we're starting to see this kind of hysteria, reefer madness hysteria coming up about, oh my God, it's going to cause people to be schizophrenic. It's all this dosage stuff. Oh my God, the THC. And there's no new data here. And it's really bad science too. And so, Jehan's look on that one.
I'm always the type of guy who drills down to the data.
and I'm just worried where the
so you don't think there's
conspiracy
theory behind the release of these articles nationally and
internationally? Well, let's start with some issues.
Let's start with the article, I guess.
Well, let's just start with something. So, just globally, even in the United States, mental health services and research is underfunded, right?
Yep.
National Institute of Health gets about $39.6 billion a year. NIM, the National Institute of Mental Health, to cover all of our mental health research and stuff, gets about $1 billion.
Yep.
Like, that's a huge difference between studying cancer and diabetes and all these other conditions to roll to that. So if you're a researcher and you're underfunded, are you going to go with some nuanced title, or are you going to be like, this is an issue, we need more funding, and start with those headlines? But the news articles generally get this stuff wrong.
Always.
It's not that it causes psychosis,
Yeah.
it's that people presenting with first-time psychosis have used cannabis in the past, and that's a consideration.
All right, so hold on, let's just rewind, because you're hitting some. So you're saying the spin in creation of the title of the article has nothing to do with the original information that was given to the publications.
Yeah, I think the publication actually shows some really interesting things, and just to give them, these researchers their due, they did something that had never been done before.
Right.
They took 11 cities across the world, administered the same survey, and they had a control group of more people who had used cannabis and never had a psychotic episode, who had used cannabis and other stuff. And just to kind of break down some of the facts for you guys, in the group that experienced first-time psychosis with cannabis, over 30% of them used 10 or more cigarettes a day. 50% were tobacco users in general, and over 40% reported using legal highs, stimulants, hallucinogens, and ketamine. No word on prescription drug use or benzodiazepines or opioids.
Right.
No information on prescription drug use was provided. They also didn't look at potency of the product or confirm that people were using these with blood tests, hair tests, urine tests, or anything like that. But it is the first of its kind study. And there's
real quick, I'm rewinding the people we've grown up with. And I know you're doing the same thing. You're seeing the face of these characters. And that does fit exactly what you've said in terms of, maybe they had one joint that day, but, you know,
They had all this other stuff.
Exactly.
And well, go ahead, Jahan, because I'm ready to talk about this too.
Well,
Sounds like bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, here's
Ask
the thing.
Snoop Dogg
You guys-
how many psychotic episodes he's had.
I don't know.
Oh
Some of
my-
his weak ass dance music, maybe that was.
Oh, Jahan.
Hey, you know, Ice.
Guess we're not getting Snoop Dogg on.
Well,
here.
Ice-T has
Damn.
one of my favorite jokes ever, and he said, "Do you know what happens when rappers can't stay down with the hardcore? They go pop."
Oh my god! Oh my god! That was so weak.
So I was gonna say that's like a 1980s joke. So it's like it's on a tape cassette that I have.
Wait, were you even born in the 80s?
Yes.
Okay.
I know.
You were born. Said it proudly.
But,
We're old.
but I'm just gonna give you two things
Damn
to
right.
help navigate this research.
Oh my God.
And the things that everyone talks about are odds ratios. Some of you are familiar with gambling, right? Odds ratios are really like, okay, you have this effect or exposure thing. Does it lead to an outcome? You can think of it very simple things like if you know, the forward of a basketball team isn't starting, what's the likelihood they're going to win? What is the outcome? If you score first in a football game, what are the chances, the odds that you're going to win that football game?
Right.
They do the same thing for research, but the odds ratios, there's only three things you need to know. And it's very simple. They do like a value, and it starts at 1. If it equals 1, the exposure, in this case cannabis, doesn't affect the odds. It's a null. It doesn't do anything. If it's greater than 1, the exposure is associated with higher, you know, chances of that outcome. So if it's 1.5 or 2, 3, that's where they get those threefold higher things. But if it's less than 1, the exposure is associated with lower odds of the outcome. So if you get a 0.5 odds ratio, it means you're less likely to have psychosis or less likely to have whatever effect you're looking at.
Yep.
The other thing is that this type of research is messy, right? There isn't really like 1 or 0 in science. There's always a range of values. Like you have this chance plus or minus this, and that's called a confidence interval. And so if the confidence interval spans more than like under 1 and over 1, so it's like 0.5 to 3, it's like, well, that means there's a group
A
of
wide
people.
range.
Yeah, it means it's not very precise data, right? So this is like, as you, Jan, said, you know, you alluded to, this is not a precise study. They gathered data accurately, but they couldn't hit the same thing every time.
But here's the thing that really messes with me about this is because they're talking about, they're trying to infer that there's this correlation. But there's this reality with people with schizophrenia is that typically before they're even diagnosed with schizophrenia, they go through this stage called a prodromal stage. And that's a stage where they're starting to have these emotional instabilities. Some of the symptoms are starting to come on and they start to kind of experience this change. And they don't really look at that piece and compare that because we're talking about this is when we usually see them actually self-medicating more. It's when they're going through this prodromal stage. So if there is a correlation, it could be caused by the fact that they're doing that to self-medicate than anything.
So let me roll that out if I'm getting it right. So the percentage of folks that maybe suffer from schizophrenia that are also potheads would
use it to self-medicate.
Answers to and reflect answers that were in the range of what you were saying.
So, and we'll break it down by city because there were some cities where I want to know what's in the weed because they had some of that, like Palermo, Italy. I don't know what's in the weed they were smoking there, but according to this data, a lot of people there have a protective effect against developing mental health issues, according to this research. But hey, I don't know what's in the water in Cambridge.
And this goes back to one of the arguments you and I always have is that they're talking about cannabis as if it's one drug, and it's not really one drug. They're not really extrapolating what are the chemovars or the different chemical components of this cannabis. So we don't even know what they're talking about, and that would be interesting.
So I think almost every researcher in the world would agree that you can't say that cannabis causes psychosis. That's not what they were looking at. They're looking at incidence of psychosis and cannabis use, not cannabis use causing psychosis. So it's simply not supported by their data. You know, if we wanted to actually suss this out, we need twin studies, genetic information, among other kinds of data. And this leads me to my favorite thing. And I read a quote by a researcher. They called it the multiple hit hypothesis. I was like, well, that makes sense for cannabis research. And it's that it's not just one thing that leads you to develop a condition. Like, you know, there's a genetic predisposition to some mental health disorders, but if those kids grow up in a supportive, stable household, they're much less likely to develop. They may never develop that.
Well, it's an epigenetic kind of issue, right? That they might have the genetic
multifaceted.
marker, but it's impacted by other variables like income, you know, family dynamics.
So marijuana is not going to make this thing come out of you.
Right.
No.
Even though it might be some hereditary stuff that you get from
Potentially.
your parents potentially.
Can I ask you a question, Jahan?
Mhm.
In lab studies, are they able to show anything like with mice or?
It's tricky because they're injecting like heroic doses into animals a lot of times. And rats and mice do not like stuff like psilocybin or LSD or THC. It's very hard to get them to self-administer it. Like you give them access to cocaine, they'll push that lever till they die.
Right.
Even if they never get another dose again after you
Wow.
cut them off. But like
That sounds like some
That's
cats
a
on my
cocaine rat,
block.
baby.
I mean, I don't mess with that LSD. That cocaine.
Oh
Wow.
my God, I love that.
Interesting.
But what's really interesting about the research is they have these two groups, a control group and the group that experienced psychosis. And what was really interesting is they mentioned this thing, legal highs.
Uh-huh.
And this was buried in the research. I had to like look and look and look. I was like, what the hell is a legal high? And it's novel psychoactive substances, which is a buzzword for synthetic cannabinoids, the designer drugs, same rates of use in both populations. So what is weird about the research is that the synthetic drug use was not a factor in developing any sort of psychotic disorder. It's a little weird. You're looking at me like that's weird.
It is because it sounds like that shit that those cats in Florida were using and eating
And going
people's faces
crazy.
and shit. Like, I mean,
Well, they're Florida men.
dude, like there's this store right by where I work at, and it's like, yo, this.
So let's
It was a jar. I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
It was
no,
a
go
jar, clear jar. It looked like buds of marijuana. And it just had it said no THC. It said CBD, and I'm like, what is that?
What
man?
kind of store is that?
It's a smoke shop. It looked, dude, I'm telling you, it shit looked just like weed, yo. It said no THC, and it said
Is
just
it the synthetic stuff?
So it's
I
just-
can't tell.
is it-
I wouldn't try that shit, dude. I
Oh,
would
no.
not.
But not
because
from any
that
kind of
synthetic
store
that
like
shit
that.
that they used to
Yes,
sell in the
that's
back
what-
of Hot Times used to
Right.
look real. Like,
well, yeah,
Yeah.
the denatured buds or whatever they
Yeah.
sold.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a cruel joke.
Yeah.
I don't mean to eat your face.
Right.
I don't mean to eat.
Right.
Have you ever heard
But
of
you shouldn't
Florida?
have-
Wait. Have you ever heard of Florida men?
No.
Have any of you ever?
There
Oh.
are men in Florida.
No, there's this joke about Florida men because they always get arrested for some of the craziest shit you've ever heard. You've never heard of Florida?
No.
Okay,
Really?
okay. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to send you guys links
Yeah.
afterwards.
All right. Well,
Like fighting alligators and shit.
Yeah.
Like
I
beating
mean-
up people for no reason and stuff. They're just crazy.
So
man.
is there a
Sorry.
correlation to something?
Well, maybe they're using that K2 and spice
Hello.
down in
All
Florida.
right. Well,
All right,
back-
little gator.
back to the research at hand. There's
Poor
one.
Jahan's trying to keep me
There
on
you
track.
go.
There's one other thing I want you to is they have this artificial sort of thing about cannabis potency where it's low potency is 10% or under, high potency is 10% or greater. But where did that data come from? And literally they surveyed these people and asked them what variety of cannabis they used and then went and looked it up online or at like a shop and were like, oh, this one-time measurement shows it's this potency, or they asked people without actually confirming it. And I thought that was a little weird because if you just put it all together, there's no effect. But if people report using higher potency or they confirm it through some weird channel, suddenly it becomes a factor. Is that something
Sorry.
you'd like to share with the rest of us?
Notes.
So I was making. I know we were being rude. Sorry,
it wasn't
Professor.
mine, Dr. J.
Dr. J, I'm sorry. I was showing him about Florida man that I wasn't
That's
that crazy.
crazy.
All right.
And they're
Well-
hilarious, aren't they?
Well,
Yeah,
so I want to go over some of these odds ratios real quick because they looked at London, Cambridge, Amsterdam, Gouda, which is in the Netherlands, Paris, Puy de Dome, Madrid, Barcelona, Bologna, Palermo, and a city in Brazil. And so, like for example, in Cambridge, the odds ratio, right, 1 being null, above 1 being increased odds,
Yep.
under 1, it was 1.3 was the odds ratio. So just above having an effect with a range of 0.4 to 4.3, which means in that population, there are some people who have they have a less chance of developing condition and then as high as a 4.3 risk. But Palermo, Italy, their odds ratio, which threw off the scale, and they had another city which responded kind of so favorably to this that they didn't even crunch the data. Like, we're not calculating it.
Another Italian city.
Yeah. I want to know what's in the cannabis in Italy
Might
because
be the sauce.
Guess where we're going this summer.
but the odds ratio in Palermo is
Uh-huh.
0.6, that is less than 1 of the odds ratio. And the range is from 0.1, pretty much as low as you can go, and like, outcome is associated with less chance, to, the high point is 2.5. But we don't hear about that in the news, that there's this spread among the cities in Europe and things like that, this isn't a predictive measure. When I say it's not precise, this is what we mean. A lot of this data straddles that. They have ranges below and, that cutoff of a 1 odds ratio.
So tell me then, so this isn't, it's interesting information, but what do we do with this data? Because what's happening is it's being picked up by news sources. It's being picked up as like, again, weed causes psychosis.
I threw the article in the trash. That's what I did.
With yeah. But I'm curious. We've got to think about that, because people are. But seriously, people are getting bombarded left and right, and it begs the question, like, what's behind this?
Yeah,
there's all of a sudden this resurgence piece.
Well, I hate to use the term of
conspiracy.
The current guy in office uses the F news term.
Yeah,
and that's how I kind of felt yesterday.
That it was.
Timing with this New York State legislation and other
and
things
New Jersey,
and
then you've got this.
Exactly.
There's something going. It just sounds
who's
like
behind
what's
it?
behind
Whoever's
it.
behind it has their own agenda, and
what was
that agenda is to not legalize marijuana.
Right.
They want it to be criminalized so that they can put your ass behind bars and make money off of you.
Yep.
That's what they want to do.
Private, and it makes you wonder.
Because
it was like it was going against.
People should be smart enough to look at that fucking first black and white bullshit reefer madness and know that you people don't. Nobody has a fucking clue. They're still learning about this whole marijuana thing.
They don't even know about the brain, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, right. I've been smoking for years. Who are you? That dude should be smoked or hot boxed. Whoever wrote that shit.
Exactly. Yeah,
he needs a tincture, damn it.
Yeah, right. Hot box that bastard.
And growing up in the city, and you see everything.
Right.
That's not one of the things that I've seen folks go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
I've seen it.
Heroin, coke,
alcohol,
crack, alcohol.
Crap,
and here's the reality.
Tobacco.
All the time.
But here's the reality.
Food,
is that schizophrenia is
it.
not it's not a disease that a lot of people have. It's a very tiny % of the population that has it. So you would argue then that if this is truly happening, we would see a larger population with schizophrenia.
And since the 1960s, it has not increased significantly. It's
schizophrenia
and other mental health disorders. It's remained constant.
And that's the piece, is that I haven't found anything in any animal studies that actually demonstrated this. So why in the hell do we keep going down this road?
Well, I can give you a couple of examples.
Somebody's got a wicked agenda.
So one is you have a vulnerable population that's not going to respond.
Prodromal stage, yeah.
They're not going to respond favorably. So they need to know, their caregivers and clinicians need to know what to look for and how to ask for help if they come across these characteristics.
Right.
And what makes them vulnerable?
Ignorance.
That's a factor.
For schizophrenia? What makes someone vulnerable for schizophrenia?
No.
Or psychosis or...
Oh, I thought you were talking about what makes them vulnerable to believe that bullshit article. I'm sorry.
Plain stupid.
Y'all lost
not
me
critical
again.
thinkers. What did you do ahead of time,
I'm
buddy?
sorry.
Oh my God.
I know it's a very nuanced issue, and they're always going to flip the script and say it causes this when they're just looking at saying, hey, people come to our clinic. Among the other things they're using, there's this population that's using cannabis, and they're having an issue. And we don't know what to do with that. But in a study with schizophrenics in New York, they actually identified people who had a history of cannabis use and found that giving them a standardized form of oral THC actually helped them because they were used to the side effects and tolerance of cannabis.
I have to tell you, when I started studying this, I was in class one day at NYU, and I was talking about cannabis and medical cannabis and the impact. And my colleagues all responded with, yeah, but it causes schizophrenia.
What? Saying what causes schizophrenia?
cannabis. But you have to understand this has been
Tell the makeup of the
just
room
hold on.
too, Jan.
So therapists, other therapists,
In
we're
other-
all licensed clinical social workers,
Mhm.
and but you have to understand that NIDA was set up. That's the National Institute of Drug Abuse, was set up to research the pathological effects of marijuana. And so what's happened was that the only research that was really happening was based on pathological use. So people could only get research funding if they were looking at marijuana. So it created this kind of environment from a research perspective where people were looking for anything to justify how marijuana could be causing damage, because then they could get funded. And so there is this huge bias even among mental health clinicians around this, because of how the research was actually, and the research was influenced by policy. This all came from Richard Nixon's 1970s war on drugs. He helped create NIDA.
Yep.
And their whole purpose was to set up to look at cannabis use and pathological substance use, specifically marijuana is what they called it. And so we have to understand that what we consider knowledge has been based on a kind of a biased political agenda. And that's not a conspiracy theory. This is something that actually is widely accepted. People understand it. You read the quotes from the Nixon administration and how they really were incredibly racist and wanted to, and saw the war on drugs as a way to really control the hippies and black people. And that was their goal.
That was
their goal.
That's what black people smoked.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was their drug of
no,
choice.
It was and the
Marijuana.
hippies.
And
There's
hippies,
this, God, I can't even remember. It's in a couple of my
People with
presentations.
dreadlocks.
Well, no, but this is a huge issue. So this is how we've learned. This is what our knowledge is, what our science is.
Right.
And there has not been funding to look at healthy use, to look at what actually can it prevent. That's why we have such a disparity with medical cannabis research, because we have focused on the pathological use and have yet to really be able to have the opportunity, the equal opportunity to look at how it can positively impact people.
What you're just hitting on is the foundation of what creates this really negative
Absolutely.
stigmas that stick to folks
Absolutely.
forever. And
that's why I'm so worried about where the hell is all this kind of publicity coming from, because it's not just arriving out of nowhere. You watch C-SPAN, you see Alex Berenson talk about this. It's everywhere now.
And I mean, this country has a historical precedence of scientifically trying to justify why certain folks are not equals.
Yep.
Whether they're measuring brains or hands or feet or whatever the crap they want to look at. I mean,
just like across on
and that whole study was bullshit.
to begin
well, on the other side of that, though, some researchers have used that to actually look for therapeutic effects by going under the guise, we think this will be harmful. One of the best examples is Donald Abrams, who used to be the chief oncologist at SF General, and he proposed a study saying, I think cannabis might be harmful to medication in HIV/AIDS patients. Instead, he showed the opposite, showed weight gain. He showed that the viral loads weren't affected. And so there are ways that you can set up studies to put out those buckets to get the data. And, if it wasn't for NIDA, we wouldn't have this rich body of research showing that the risks from using cannabis grown in Mississippi from the federal program, that there are minimal risks associated with that. So there's been a lot of research that they've done, but again, a lot of the rats and mice studies are not, you can't really extrapolate them to humans. And it's really, you never get a study approved to look at, will cannabis cause a mental health illness? You can't design a study.
Right.
You would never get that approved,
right,
to look for a harm.
So we're in the speculative stage right now,
but something's going on from a PR perspective that we have to kind of question. Where is this coming from? Why? Because it's all about getting in front of the story, and it sounds like,
why don't we just make up our own shit?
That's what they're doing.
Because we're not that way.
Hear your lungs on tobacco.
No, because we're not that way.
You're right.
Hear your lungs on weed. See the difference?
Yeah.
No, you're right. Because we're not that way.
We're not that way.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's frustrating, but we're going to be better than that.
Well, we got to fight them somehow.
That's why we're doing this podcast, Greer.
Is that why?
This is why we're doing this podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate your guys' diving into the deep dive of the research and commenting on it, because this type of information is going to continue to be out, and we have to demystify it, let people know, give them some tools to go through this, because it's not clean research.
Well, you see how it's impact. But you
It's
see how it just impacted New Jersey yesterday.
What?
I don't.
Stuff like
I
this.
disagree about. So New Jersey's bill to legalize it was ended, right? They're
Yesterday?
Yes. Yeah.
But that's a typical process for legislative hearings. It'll get passed in this year.
But Jay
It hit
Han,
a road bump.
a lot of what I've read was that there was grassroots concern about what it was going to do. And that's why these articles are so important, because they're getting into the mainstream media and influencing John
Policy.
and Mary down the street, who are afraid that they're going to wind up having tons of schizophrenics on their blood.
Right.
So,
That's
so that's what
exactly
I'm
who it
saying.
touched.
I do believe.
There's
Have fun with your opioids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Enjoy your opioids.
Exactly.
Purdue Farm.
Opioid crunch.
Oh, Jesus
Fucking
Christ.
jackasses.
Yeah.
Right.
Take that.
So I hear what you're saying, but I think
Fentanyl
there's.
chips.
I hate to say this. I think there's a more sinister.
Put a Michael
thing
Jackson
there.
in you.
Oh my God! What? What about Michael Jackson?
I
Oh.
said fentanyl chips.
We're quick here.
Wait. What was it? Fentanyl? I thought what was that drug he slept with?
He was
saying like
Fentanyl.
liquid anesthetic.
That was
No,
it.
he was some kind of friggin' anesthesia,
Fent-
not just fentanyl, but he took some anesthesia at night to sleep.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my God. Sorry. We're totally off topic again.
No, it's fine.
This is the THC speaking, I guess.
wasn't it?
Sorry, people who are listening to this. We're not.
brilliant.
Thank you
I
for
know,
moving
I
your
know.
head away
Shit,
from the
we can shoot
microphone.
anything.
I didn't want Tito coming in my house.
Oh, I heard what you said about my brother.
Open up.
Oh my God!
You didn't even get to sing a line, Tito. Please.
Sit down.
Just sit down, dude. Play the bongos, dude. Whatever
Play
it
the
is.
bongos. Get your polyester pants
Right,
out.
right.
A B C.
Exactly.
C,
Messing up the
1, 2,
steps.
3. Yeah, he was the one who
Yeah, he
couldn't
was the
keep
one who
time.
couldn't keep time. I'm sorry, Tito, but it is true. Step off, brother.
Oh my God! I'm dancing in this fucking video too. Oh Jesus Christ!
All right.
All right,
Settle
sorry.
down, class.
Settle
Settle
down.
down.
No, we needed a laugh.
No.
It's been a shitty day.
Really? On National Blunt Day, it's been bad?
Wait, what? Is there National Blood
Well, it's
Day?
not federally recognized, but apparently, according to some random post on some urban myth website today,
It was Instagram.
Now, I
Instagram.
would like to know how many people are aware of this alleged holiday. I just found out about it today. When
Me
you
too.
sent
Me
it.
too. I didn't.
Okay.
Me
but How
too.
many other people know?
No one.
Like,
They're creating a fucking holiday.
all right, but
Some
I'm just
companies
saying,
getting
somebody
paid for
else said this. Somebody else knows that other than us four.
It was
What happened on this day 20 years ago?
That somebody was
That
like, yo, this is National Blunt Day. That shit probably came out like a week ago, but
Wait, hold on. I'm going to look it up because
Okay.
you know it.
All
Oh,
right.
wait, no. Seriously, Urban Dictionary. And if
Yeah.
Urban Dictionary says it, you know it's right. A national holiday on March 27th for blunt lovers nationwide
boom.
to
When did it
celebrate
start?
the beloved blunt and blunt culture.
When did that start?
Of course,
When
that
did it
was
start?
published by Blunt Day on February 28th, 2017.
Yes.
2 years
There you
ago.
go.
And 3
2
people
years
don't
ago.
like it, but
So
50,
how many
93
people know about
like it.
that? And then that's how we should decide whether it's a national holiday. I heard some shit about donuts. The National Donut Day. Fuck donuts.
Which would you rather have, a donut or a blunt?
Well, you gotta have a donut after you have a blunt.
I
You
know.
gotta-
Krispy
can't just,
Kreme?
That's how Dunkin'
Yeah.
Donuts stays in business.
Wait, do you like Krispy Kreme or Dunkin'?
Crispy. Dunkin'
Yes!
is whack. They don't make their own
Donuts,
donuts.
yeah.
Like,
No,
like I see
Krispy
the
Kreme.
truck in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I
they
do
take the
love
donuts
them.
off the truck.
Down south, they make them
No,
in the
I'm
store.
talking about Dunkin'
Dunkin',
Donuts.
yeah, they're frozen.
No, they're
shit.
Krispy
That's
Kreme. No,
frozen.
they made them
Yeah,
fresh
I know.
at the
And you
Harlem.
can get them
location.
hot.
I mean, it was like crackheads would be there at night.
and Jan.
I swear, in the Harlem location on 8th Avenue when it was there.
Yeah,
You know, it was like
What happened
did
to all
they-
those stores disappeared like that?
Disappeared.
financial mismanagement. I
Is that
guess.
what it is?
I think they
heard. Not to
declared
mention they were
bankruptcy,
really
but they were
bad for you
good.
too. Like
I
they,
know.
you can like
You
one,
could eat like a whole dozen.
you can't have more than one of those. Like
Well, you
two a
remember
week or something.
Georgie's in Harlem?
Oh, what Georgie? Oh yeah.
Remember on
yeah.
that's the original like donut spot.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh my god.
Is it
They
still
were-
there?
You would put them
I
in the
don't think-
brown bag.
Yeah, in
and
a
the
brown bag.
It
And
would be
grease it.
oily.
Yeah, it'd be like, you have to juggle it like that. 'Cause it gets so damn
So
hot.
greasy.
Yeah, and
hot.
eat, burn your mouth. But
Yeah.
oh, incredible.
Yeah.
All right.
Donuts.
Okay, since you
Oh.
guys have
Sorry.
your critical thinking hats on,
Poor Jay.
we're gonna go through. I got the fake news and I got the fake
Uh-oh.
science.
Uh-uh.
Do you guys want to start with the news? Or you want to start with the
Let's
science?
start with the fake news.
Fake news. All
All
right.
right.
So our first.
I
So
almost don't like using that term.
okay, well, come
Okay,
up with
can we
another one.
call-
Bullshit.
Is it fact or finding?
Yeah,
Poo-poo
fact.
time.
Yeah,
Fact or finding?
Fact or
Yeah, because we
finding.
don't
I like
want to
it.
give
Yeah,
any
yeah.
kind
Yeah,
of
if any,
credence
it's
to
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because he does come up in this. All right. So
Cool.
Propanol.
So
That was
our
We already
first-
know that's
so-
the truth.
is our first headline. Is this a fact or a finding? CBD concentration supply chains will be questioned by FDA during April public comments. CBD concentration supply chains will be questioned by the FDA during April public comments. Is this wishful thinking or a wish come true for consumers and caregivers?
I'm gonna say that's wishful thinking. I wish it was a wish to come true, but I'm gonna say wishful thinking.
Thank you,
it's
Greer.
true.
You think
I'm-
it's? Why do you think it's true, Jim? And don't say because you read it somewhere, because that's
cheating.
And let me say,
I can't help it. I was
You
CC'd on the
might
email.
have some inside knowledge. Well, I think it's true.
Or maybe I'm just
I was gonna
messing
say
with you. I might be lying to you right
Oh,
now.
no.
So
Andy.
according to law.com, attorneys and others are talking that the FDA will be questioning this
Yes.
during a hearing in April.
Yes, yes. It's
Very
about
good.
damn time then.
All right.
Wait. Why though, Jahan? Do you want to explain why?
And
Well,
who will
there's
be
the-
at the
And why are
Hearing.
they going to do this?
So
Yeah. Who are these
Yeah.
people at the hearing? Like, what qualifies them?
So some of them will mostly be public officials and regulators,
Yeah.
but also public comments. But they're just going to take the comments. They're not obliged to answer them. But you'll get to. They did this last week with the USDA hemp webinar, and you got to hear all these interesting questions from regulators and learn that even government officials can't operate a webinar because they're having all sorts of technical issues. But it is just a chance to see what's on everyone's mind. But the FDA is concerned because a lot of products you buy online you have 0 CBD in them or the label's inaccurate. There
You
might
know-
also be other contaminants. So we're going to kind of start to tease this out. and
Is
find
that
out what
because of
issues-
this whole thing with Exhibit?
Uh,
No, like seriously.
I mean, he was
like,
one that was
I mean,
busted, but there's
Well,
a bunch
there are
of
a
them
lot
out
of them.
there.
His
You know,
thing-
Dr. Dre also
it's
calling that with
almost
them.
like
Yeah,
there
well, that's
needs-
why
Who
that
did?
shit blew up. Dr. Dre,
Brass knuckles.
Yeah.
brass knuckles, yeah.
Yeah.
And it turns
It's a
out that
good
there were
thing.
more.
Well, they
there was
were
more
s-
pesticides.
Well,
and-
they were being a little stupid with that, like labeling it as free from all contaminants and
Right.
pesticides. It's like
Claims you can.
it was the most potent cartridge. That's one of the things
And it
they said,
wasn't.
and it turned out to be one of the least potent
Yeah,
cartridges.
right.
right.
Like I mean, it's
I'm
just
glad they're doing this.
label claims. You can't just get away with
Good.
saying, "Hey,
Yep.
this will cure cancer" anymore. Like you're gonna might have to have some science to back that up.
Right.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So our next story is I want you to know this. Is this true, or did I run out of beer while writing this? Blue Moon's creator launched a cannabis beer that sold out in 4 hours. Blue Moon's creator launches a cannabis beer that sold out in 4 hours.
True.
Yeah.
It's totally
According to Yahoo Finance, that is career. Blue
Heard
Moon's
about it.
creator launched a cannabis beer, sold out in
Nice.
first hours of its
Yeah.
first
true.
run.
Isn't that amazing?
Of course.
Oof.
I should tell you
Oh
something.
my God.
Well, I do like Blue Moon.
I do
God.
too.
I
Also,
love
just so you
Except that
know,
mango
it's owned by
crap, I can't
Coors.
do
So
Oh, it's owned by
Is
Coors.
it really?
Now it is.
Oh,
yeah,
now I don't like it no more.
I know, right?
Jay.
That's how I roll, B. I don't
So-
fuck with Chick-fil-A either, you know?
that's the problem with.
It's a very conflicting thing. It's a very
Are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah.
No, I
Because they
Why Chick-fil-A is owned by Coors?
Nah,
no,
man.
because they contribute to like really conservative
Yeah, I
things,
know.
and this
Exactly.
is the hardest.
Right.
No, my oldest is trans and gay, and he's just like, this is the hardest conflict I have. I want to eat Chick-fil-A.
I'm
Really?
not up
It's a
on. I
hard
didn't know
thing,
that.
Oh, there's some right.
Yeah,
there's
they
some not good.
right wing
Ooh,
stuff, like
yeah.
really bad
Ooh.
right wing stuff.
Yeah.
Right wing. I can't even
Wow.
speak. Right wing.
All right.
Anywho.
All
Are you
right,
guys ready for the next one?
let's go with it.
Mhm.
All right.
Yes.
This is a fresh one. The Heritage Inn International Hot Air Balloon Competition issues statement banning use of marijuana products. The Heritage Inn International Hot Air Balloon Competition issues statement banning use of marijuana products.
I'm gonna say
Fact or finding?
Fact. I can see them saying that. Yeah,
Mhm.
don't smoke weed while you're in the air. Right? Well, this shit
What's
is
the
fun.
I don't even know
Right.
what the Heritage Inn is.
So there's this big international hot air balloon competition that features races and other things. and it's coming up
Hot air
soon.
balloon.
I think
No,
it's true.
I say it's false.
I think it's true.
I totally made this one.
Oh,
up.
nice. I can see them saying some shit like that. You can't get high in the balloon.
You'll pop the balloon.
You'll pop the balloon.
Can't get high in the balloon.
Okay. All right. For all you
Pop the
conspiracy theorists, I thought you guys would like
Oh,
this
I think
one.
he's talking to us, Randy.
Yeah.
The White House and federal scientists are pushing the myth that marijuana is laced with fentanyl. The White House and federal scientists are pushing the fact that marijuana is laced with fentanyl. Is this a fact, or is this like a falsehood?
Oh,
Is this like something I made up, or is this a real headline?
Fact.
I'm
Made
gonna
up.
say
I
it's
totally
made up.
believe it.
I hope it's
So
made up.
Greer,
bet
you
you
hope
they
it's
would
made
do
up?
it.
Yes,
I'm
it's
saying
made
it's
up.
made up.
I
Jesus.
almost want to finish writing that article. I could see it so much being true.
So according to BuzzFeed,
Wow.
this is a true story.
Wow, rotten fucks.
I can
Although
see it.
they don't have any like super concrete information. It
Yeah, well,
appears-
that's typical, though.
Of course.
They're saying all sorts
And they're
of
bringing it
science.
over the southern border
Right.
on the backs of some big,
And you know why?
It's
We
on their
need a
50-pound
wall.
calves.
yeah,
We need a
cattle
wall.
upside calf. Yeah, exactly.
Stupid
We
orange
need a law.
motherfucker.
A law.
Oh,
The wall.
God.
Put the wall up. That'll
All
stop
right.
it.
That'll stop it.
Yeah.
all right.
Wow.
So our next one. Our next
Sorry.
one.
Jackasses.
So Seth
Orange.
wrote. Hold on.
Okay.
Our next. Is this a fact or is this
Oh,
a
I'm
falsehood?
knocking this thing.
Seth Rogen teams up with Canopy Growth to launch cannabis brand. Is this true, or are we writing Pineapple Express?
No, I'm gonna say true. He smokes.
Pineapple
I
Express.
wouldn't doubt it.
Us, true.
It is true. Seth Rogen has teamed up with
Smart.
Canopy Growth to launch his brand of cannabis variety called Houseplant. They're very a little dodgy, not clear on what the actual financial agreement is, but apparently they purchased a 25% stake in his variety he's been developing called Houseplant.
And they are owned by what kind of
I don't know if
company?
they're owned, but they received a large investment,
From?
several $billion dollars.
From who owns the genetics of the plant? House plant. I mean, is
I
that
think
Seth?
Seth, he owns the
really?
majority
I
of it.
think
what,
we're
did he
afraid to
create
get
this? Did he- is
this
what, from
somebody?
tobacco companies.
From old school.
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
He didn't even hear that. I say this, and
Shit,
he's
we
like
can see
totally
that, of
ignoring me.
course.
My God, these men are talking to each other, not listening to a damn thing
We're
saying.
scheming on
They are
naming our own
owned by a
strain.
tobacco company.
Yeah.
Who is?
Canopy.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, they get
They have a
investments from lots of people.
Well, we don't fuck with nothing that's run by with nothing tobacco, yo. Sorry, guys. We don't want none of your dollars, B.
Well,
I don't
That's
want
fine.
nothing from tobacco. Sorry. You did bad shit to my lungs. I don't need you.
Yeah.
Got it.
okay. All right.
And you're back when you had to pick it. Back in-
Ah, damn
Oh, ow.
it. Yeah, I'm on back, you bastards.
Ow.
You want to give me some funding?
Right.
Give me some reparations.
I'll give you a tube of Ben Gay, you lazy.
Randy's on fire
Oh,
today.
God.
I love
All right,
it.
let's
I
get
love
it.
it.
All right. You
Sorry,
guys
we're
ready for the
frustrating
next one?
Jehan again.
Yes.
No, it's fine. All right. So our next one, you kind of touched on the subject earlier, but hip hop artist Lil Wayne involved in little lawsuit over his marijuana vape pen company. With a nod to his song titles, do you believe me, or is this just hustler music? Lil Wayne involved in little lawsuit over his marijuana vape pen company. Is this a fact, or did I make this up? What do you guys think?
I'm gonna say it's a fact.
You made it up.
It wouldn't be a little lawsuit. It would
Well, that's
be a
what
big
they were
lawsuit.
probably
So
trying to
it's
be
a
funny when they
fiction.
wrote it.
Well, I was trying to be funny when I wrote it.
It was funny.
But it is
You
believable
hit the mark.
because, right? Because
No.
you see a lot of these
Yeah.
people don't know much about quality control and running other
course.
businesses.
They don't care
They
about the
don't
quality
care.
control. All they care about the quality of that money.
Yeah.
Give me the money, Al.
Running it like they ran a hip hop label. Truthfully, you don't know
Yep.
anything about that stuff. You
Yeah.
know?
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Good job, guys, so far. All right. Next one, we got just a couple left before the science ones, if
I
you
like
guys
it.
have
Oh,
energy.
God.
But here's the next one. People are lining up to grow marijuana for research. Trump's Justice Department won't let them. People are lining up to grow marijuana for research. Trump's Justice Department
I'll
won't
agree.
let them.
Agree.
Is this another reason to hate on the current administration or an excuse for us to discuss growing marijuana?
Both. I don't trust.
I don't put anything past Trump. I'm gonna say, yeah, it's true.
Yeah. All right. It
It
is indeed a true story at vox.com on their policy and politics. So they've tried to open. So right now there's only been one federal license to grow cannabis awarded to the same place. They grow it outdoors in Mississippi. So they can really underbid anyone who proposes an indoor grow house.
And who is this?
So what?
Well, he's a good guy.
Actually,
He's a good guy.
this guy's a really good guy.
Remember,
You know him personally?
he's under pressure from NIDA in these groups, but for 40 years, he's been growing a consistent supply of cannabis. And the way that world works is when you put in your drug file, you have to give all the specs. And in the 60s, he's like, oh, maybe I'm just going to grow this thing that's like 5 to 8% THC. You know, he's didn't really have a sense of what they wanted. And now that things have come a long way, he's still stuck with that same regulations, that same paperwork.
So he can't even change
But
it.
we have 40, 50 years of data on the same variety of cannabis being used consistently, people getting canisters of these pre-rolled cannabis cigarettes to use. But again, it's grown outdoors in Mississippi. They issue this every 3 to 5 years. People can submit bids to be the site. But there has been a push in the Obama era to open up the number of licenses for cannabis cultivation, which supplies all the drug studies. So all the studies of marijuana. So they basically
one farm.
Yeah.
In the past
To the
40
University
years
of Mississippi.
in Mississippi has provided all of the product that's
Yep.
being that we get our
for
facts
research.
for research.
Yeah.
For research, not the stuff I doubt if it was the stuff he was getting in our hands.
No, just one.
No.
And one strain.
Well, now he has a couple different varieties. It's really funny. The guy who grows this actually, he's one of the sweetest, most open researchers you'll ever meet.
Really?
But he doesn't use cannabis. But he's so funny because
serious.
But he loves the way it smells, but he's never touched it. But he's
a nice guy.
He's really his name is Mohamed El Salih. He's an Egyptian guy, super sweet. He helped me out a lot in my career, and just being open about collaboration. But I remember one day he called me. He's like, we were growing this mango variety. And I was like, really? He's like, and it's weird. It smells just like mangoes. I mean, really? He was like super excited about the smell of it. And I was like, I love this guy.
Can you imagine how difficult his job must have been to be the only licensed grower here in the U.S.? And he's gotten so much flack, people not really understanding the parameters he was having to work
How do you not get stoned and be, I mean, that's like a blind man going to a museum. I'm sorry, but I mean, you know, how do you like that Picasso? You know, you can't, I mean, it's not
smells
braille,
nice,
man. It's, you know, it smells nice.
How do you like that?
Is it oil paint? And
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, God. But really, I mean,
but his job is not to talk about the effects. His job is to produce a standardized supply that meets health and safety parameters. They've never had a recall. They never had mold.
But who gets this though? Who has access to this?
There are researchers that do apply for it. Sue Sisley was one who got it. Ryan Vandry at Johns Hopkins. They've done studies.
All the research centers across the country. So
you apply to the DEA. DEA says, "Hey, buddy, we got some orders. You grow this much to meet this demand."
This need,
Okay, and then you go and you send that over to some researchers. So this marijuana,
So this is basically as if Dave Chappelle in his movie, he's working at that lab. Remember what was the name of that? Oh my God, Half-Baked. That's it. They're the one lab who did this. Yeah.
With all of this research.
I know.
No, it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
can you imagine how hard? I mean, but there are a few patients who were actually getting this.
Okay, that's my like. Is it
going
to help anything?
So in 1970, they started this IND program, Investigative New Drug Program. And you might have heard the name like Robert Randall, patient 0.
Right.
So they had a number of patients. Many of them have passed away. I think there's still 3 or 4 that are still alive, who started this program, canceled under King George I, George Bush Sr. No more, like the first couple years they had it, no one was interested. And then they got like thousands of applications for people who wanted to be in this, because once you got enrolled in the program, there's still, I think, 3 or 4 people receive every month a canister of 300 pre-rolled cannabis cigarettes. They go to the pharmacy and pick it up, and they're allowed to use them anywhere. They have like a federal permission slip to use their product. One of them's
but are they giving results back for that, or are they just getting their 300?
Yeah, they're just getting. So one of the guys, Irv Rosenfeld, actually applied to the Guinness Book of World Records And Irv now holds the record for most joints smoked because he
Great,
can
you gotta
document it.
You gotta go there, Jake.
But no one has a garage full of these canisters except for these people.
Right.
So
Wait.
I couldn't
Oh
get
my
one then,
God.
right? Like I couldn't apply
No.
for it.
Nope.
We could call Irv.
No. Irv.
Yeah.
What are you gonna apply for? I have a whole truckload in my.
In the back of my house.
So,
Come over, Chocolate.
Chocolate. Wait, is Irv your stepfather?
No.
No. Oh, who's Irv?
Irv is from Mr. Selznick from my building. God bless his soul.
And he
sweet.
really
Yeah.
called you Chocolate?
Yeah, he called.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it
God.
was
Irv.
brilliant. Brilliant.
Okay.
idea.
Oh my God.
What are you up to, Chocolate? You staying out of trouble?
Staying out of trouble?
So what was your nickname?
He had a
They
dog
call
named
all black people
Slimer.
Chocolate.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, the dog named what?
Slimer. I think it's a
Slimer?
it's a Yiddish curse, if I'm not mistaken. It's
That's right.
Yeah,
All right.
Holy
Sorry.
shit.
I don't forget anything.
All right. You guys want to talk about growing marijuana more for research, or you want to move on to the next one? How are you feeling? You have more
Research.
I'm a little sad
Right.
that somebody like myself couldn't get a canister.
something like
I'd
that.
like to smoke it and give you my input.
Well, I've gone with Irv to go lobbying and talking to
Irv.
elected officials, and he brings the canister with him to show elected officials that, hey, I'm a successful stockbroker. This isn't like making me crazy.
Mhm.
And they assign a shadow to him, like a dude to follow him around to make sure he's not passing out joints. And so he goes to the bathroom and he has to hold his canister at all times. He's not allowed to set it down.
What?
And I remember he comes out of the bathroom laughing, and he's like holding his canister. He's like, yeah, I was going to use the bathroom. I tried to hand it to the shadow, and he like kind of freaked out. So he's like tried to hand it to him. The guy's like walking away. But-
How old is Irv?
I think he's in his 50s now, and he wrote a book called
So
My
he's a
Medicine.
young guy.
Younger than me.
Young
Yeah.
guy.
So it was for a rare bone disorder that he has that no other medication can
Could
treat.
work.
Yeah, but a lot of it was given again to people with glaucoma and things like that.
And
Mm.
he didn't develop psychosis.
And he didn't go crazy.
Mm.
Yep, he didn't go crazy.
Yeah.
Anywho.
All right,
So let's do something fun.
couple more of these news headlines. I think you're gonna like the next 4 or so we got. 4, maybe 5, 4.5. All right.
Do it.
So our next headline is this the fact or is this false? NBC's Tom Brokaw reveals he takes medical marijuana to relieve pain.
True.
Also
I've been-
true.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
Well, you
Not
know,
him taking it, but he seems.
I smoked with him, baby.
No, you did
Yeah,
not.
I'm
Tommy.
kidding.
Me
well,
and Tommy. Oh my God, Tommy.
he has a quote I think you'd really like. He says, "If fishing is a religion, fly fishing is high church."
Bingo.
So this is a
Come
true
on,
story. He's been using it, and it's led him to talk about the cost of medicine in this country. He was
Thank
spending
you.
$10,000 a
Good.
day on treatments in and out of the Mayo Clinic, and now he's
What
Is
kind
it
of
something
pain
with his
condition?
eyes?
he has
because-
cancer,
He has cancer.
and that's what he was using it
Dude.
to rid
What
to
is the
cancer-related
Mayo
pain.
Clinic? What is it?
The
It's
Mayo Clinic?
It's just like
Yeah.
a medical facility.
Yeah.
Really good.
I keep seeing the commercial for it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yo, is this for like a rehab or something? Like a
No,
drug rehab?
it's a big medical center. It's a really prestigious medical
the
center.
commercials don't
They're-
show that.
That's
They
one of the
don't-
many
Yeah.
things they offer there.
Yeah,
Oh, what,
Yeah.
like for rehab?
Rehabilitation services,
Oh,
But-
okay.
treatments for cancer
Mhm.
and other conditions.
Oh,
But it's
okay.
just really well known. They're all over the country, but they're headquartered.
All right.
in
Why you
another
laughing,
state.
Rick?
He's so excited about
I'm
the damn
sorry.
Mayo
Yeah, I
Clinic.
was like,
No, because every time I see that commercial, I think it's like it doesn't.
can I get a hero? It's like,
Damn it! I don't know. It doesn't tell me what it is.
right.
It just says that it's like it's a horrible commercial. It doesn't tell you.
So you're saying their brand is not that widely
It's
known.
I don't know what you are. You don't. That
Well-
does not tell me. I thought it was, a place. You got an opioid problem. Yeah, come to the Mayo Clinic. That's what I thought.
As opposed to the mustard clinic.
Is there?
See,
mustard
I'm not a
surgery.
freaking.
That's right. You should
did-
stick to
I could have helped you with
mental
that
health.
I'm not a comedian.
Go ahead, Dr.
Oh,
J.
sorry.
All right.
Dr. J's getting frustrated again.
No,
We're like a bunch of bad students with a great substitute teacher. Go ahead, brother.
And with poor attention issues.
all right,
I
all
know
right.
about that.
Just a couple more of these. They're going to start to get a little wacky, so hang on.
Uh-oh.
This is
Oh, they're more wacky?
But yeah, this one isn't that wacky, but Puerto Rico becomes the first U.S. territory to send marijuana legalization to governor in 2019. Is this fact, or is this just something I made
To
up?
send it to where?
to the governor for
The first territory?
Yeah.
True.
Yes.
True.
Is it Puerto Rico?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, is it another? Whoa. See, I think he just gave us a hint.
Oh,
I
is it
think
friggin'
it may not be
Guam?
Puerto Rico, but it might be true.
No, it is Puerto Rico.
See, I don't like the way
Look
he
at
said
him.
that.
He likes his power right now.
All right, I'm
gonna
He's
stick to
totally
true.
liking his
True.
power.
I'm gonna say true.
Well, it is true that there was the first U.S. territory to send marijuana legalization to governor.
Guam.
It was Guam. Yes.
Ah,
Sorry, I had to throw that
It's not
curveball
Puerto
in there.
Rico.
I wanted to
It's
talk
not
about
Puerto
it.
Rico.
I think it's really an interesting thing. It's not Puerto Rico, despite all that's going on there with industry, and they
That's
tried to
right.
pass
Yeah.
all those bills. I thought it would be Puerto Rico,
Me too.
but it's Guam.
Yeah.
All right, they're the first U.S. territory. Very interesting.
Trump has
to
a
see if
problem
that-
with Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Huh?
Trump has many problems.
With Puerto
All right.
Rico.
All right. So here's one you guys are gonna love. Is this a fact or is this false? Texas lawmakers approve marijuana decriminalization in committee vote.
Oh, that's false.
I'm gonna say true.
I'm going to say false.
Texas is purple.
False.
They're going blue.
No, they're not.
According to
It's
Marijuana
Texas.
Moment, Texas lawmakers have approved a marijuana
Oh, shit.
decriminalization bill, and it will be debated. They're going to schedule a date for it. to be
Texas
debated.
is purple and it's going blue.
So you
Alright.
think the
You think
liberals
that?
in Texas is putting
My man,
pressure?
Austin, Texas is fucking fire, dude.
Austin,
Austin,
Texas
Texas
is
is-
a
Wait, that's
tiny
blue.
ass part
That
of
doesn't
Texas.
matter. That
I
place,
lived in Houston. It was-
Houston is banging too. But I mean,
Houston's
all of
red.
these places,
Yeah,
that
that's
these
right.
people are
Houston's
banging in these
red.
places, man. Austin and Houston shit,
No.
Dallas, yo. I'm telling you, they
that was one of the most conservative places I've ever been.
watch. They're
Oh.
purple
I
and they're
hope
going
so.
blue.
I hope so.
I hope so. Too
I
many
hope
guns
so.
down
So
here.
That's
our
right,
next-
and it's everybody got
Wow.
one. That's why you don't have. That's why ain't no
That's
shots are being fired.
Yeah.
Everybody got a gun.
Oh my God.
All right. Our next story, and diving into the weirdness, these next couple
Uh-oh.
ones are a little strange, but according to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, WrestleMania's main event will feature only female wrestlers due to WWE superstars failing drug tests for marijuana.
False.
That's false. But they
I
are
wish
gonna,
it was
they are gonna have an all women's
Female.
wrestling thing.
WrestleMania,
WrestleMania.
but
That's
the
because
reason-
they're a bunch of creep freak dudes that don't get no girls and they love watching women
Yep.
wrestle.
Yep.
That you are absolutely right. The part about failing drug tests for
Right.
marijuana is totally false, but it will feature all female
Yeah.
wrestlers for the main event, first time ever.
Yeah.
All right, it's a fun one.
Great.
Perverts.
I know,
Awesome.
that's what they,
Friggin'
phrase.
objectifying women. Yeah. Oh, Jahan rolled his eyes. Yes.
Ronda Rousey. I don't know. I mean, I feel
Wait,
like
is she
Wait, that's-
is she a wrestler
yes.
now?
Yeah,
Well,
she's a
Rowdy
wrestler
Ronda
now.
Rousey.
Yeah,
She's the
wrestling.
main
She
event.
can't take no real punches no more. She got to
What?
fake it now.
Are you
Yeah.
serious?
Yes.
She
Like
just-
2-3 years she been
Oh, I didn't know
faking
she
it.
left him.
She just
Oh,
throws
yeah.
beautiful
It's
judo
when she
throws
lost.
on people now. That's all
Yeah,
she
and
does.
gets paid. Well,
Yeah.
good for her. She
Yeah,
won't
she
get
should be
Oh,
getting
we all
punched in
need
the
to.
face
We
anyway.
Yeah,
all
and
need
this
to
might
do
be
well.
her entry into movies and action stuff.
Oh,
like
she's
The
already
Rock.
got-
She's
She's already
already
been in
in
movies.
movies. Yeah,
Yeah.
she killed it.
She would kick
Hmm.
my ass.
All right.
Oh, yeah, she kicked my ass. I didn't know Ronda Rousey.
Greer, would
yeah.
she kick yours or would you
Well,
kick hers?
he knows martial arts.
She would.
but
Wait,
I
did you
can
guys
fake it for a
wait? Did you
second.
hear what happened to Dr. J?
What happened?
Oh, well,
Oh,
we're
Lord.
getting a little off topic, but
Yes, of course we are.
I did my jujitsu testing
That's
on
right.
Saturday,
And-
and JKD all in the span of 3 hours. It was brutal. But I did jujitsu in the morning, and then like an hour later, I did the Jeet Kune Do testing, and I got promoted in both, and it was brutal.
Yeah, see, these are good
Right.
things. We need
There
to
you go.
celebrate these things. I'm a
You
freaking
hear that, Rhonda?
therapist.
We're coming for you.
Let's get him aboard the chop.
Oh my God. We should do that on video between him and Greer.
Oh,
that would be a hilarious sketch.
And Jan,
If she came looking for
Yeah, we'll
us,
hold
We'll
it.
hold it.
Don't hit me.
If she came, I'm out of here, dude.
If
I ain't
I want
testing
Ronda
her.
Rousey. I want to see Ronda Rousey kick your butts.
the camera would fall to the side. Hey, Rowdy, come on.
Wait a minute.
I can't breathe.
Okay. I can't breathe. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Uncle.
Uncle. I can't breathe.
Uncle.
Ronda Rousey.
Please
messing
don't
with her.
dislocate my elbow.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, just a few more of these.
Oh my God,
All right.
Ronda Rousey.
From international news, could a giant wooden bong revive the town of Wooden Bong, Australia?
Yes.
Yes.
true?
I would agree with that.
No.
I love how you said that.
According to woodcarver Paul Person, he wants Wooden Bong, New South Wales, to commission a massive wooden bong to draw business to a small, economically struggling town. Quote, tourists would travel all over the world just to experience our tremendous and fully functional working wooden Godzilla bong, the same way they do to climb the Story Bridge, wrote John Birmingham.
I was thinking the Aborigines blow on those
The
long,
didgeridoo.
so I thought maybe
Didgeridoo.
that's what
Did
they
I-
were using.
Yeah.
Did I ever-
Maybe they already had it.
Did I ever
Sam's son
share
played
that
the hell out
I
that
traveled to Australia? I actually
Really?
went mining for opals in the middle of Cooper
Stop.
Pedy. I slept underground in a cave for about a week.
Did you find?
Uh-huh.
What?
I lit dynamite. I was
Wow.
crazy. When I was 22, I sold everything I owned and I wanted to move to Australia to be with a boy. And that lasted like a week. And then I took off for the rest of the country and had so much fun. And one of the adventures was staying with a bunch of people that me and this girl that I'm from Canada, we all met. And we stayed there for a week and went opal mining. I climbed Ayers Rock. I've had fun in my life. Sorry.
That is nice.
But I came back
Did you
with like
ask the
bags
elders if
of
you could climb Ayers
opals.
Rock?
Well, it was before. It was when we
Oh.
didn't realize that. I wouldn't do that now.
'cause
you-
No,
didn't
this
you-
was
you
Yeah,
went-
I
Yeah.
walked around it, dude.
Yeah.
It took almost 17
in
and a half
Alice
years.
Springs. It's. I have to tell you, I did it, and I was like, I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna
can
die.
see. You
It's
can't
steep.
walk up it anymore.
Yeah.
But dude,
And that's
Randy,
the big.
So you've been to Australia?
oh, yeah.
Did you go up to Darwin? Any of those places?
No.
Oh, just
But
Alice Springs.
Ayers Rock,
Ayers
dude.
Rock.
you first of all, I wish
Beautiful.
you could see it for one. And then they said 75% of it is underground.
Yep.
Really?
And this thing is massive, Ran. It's crazy.
And the
Is that the
mythology
flat
is
no,
beautiful.
it's kind of big and
It's a
red. I
huge
have a
red
picture of me
rock.
standing in
yeah,
front
Yeah.
of it.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember.
It's cool.
And then you get
Yeah,
close,
yeah.
you can see like these footsteps, like a trail that goes
Uh.
up there.
And the sunsets are
And then
beautiful.
there's a rope around
Yeah.
it now. Like you
Yeah.
got to
You
get
can't do
the
it
permission
now.
from the elders.
Because it is.
Because
it
people
was
would just
really
come from all over and
sacrilegious.
just fucking walk all over
Right.
the place, run up there,
Like I
fucking
did.
drop bottles and like drink.
course.
It's
I didn't
like,
do that.
you know, yeah.
But it was anyway. We totally
Go.
got
All
off
right, no,
topic.
that's all right. Real quick,
Great
and then we're
question.
going to do just a couple science findings after
Oh my
this,
God.
these couple ones. But our next headline, is this a true story or not, that happened recently? During interview, Charles Barkley reveals he smoked several blunts before achieving his career high of 33 rebounds against the Rockets.
No, not true.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no.
I'm gonna say yes.
It is totally made up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
He's
love
a
Charles.
cornball. Yeah, he
Yeah,
he
yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
make fun of
Oh,
him for
no,
being
yeah,
from
I don't know. I
Alabama.
wouldn't-
Yeah.
I don't
I
enjoy
ain't been
smoking
doing-
marijuana.
Yeah.
I used to just drink what was that wine?
Boone's Farm.
Boone's Farm. That's what I would do.
He's
Drink Boone's
from-
Farm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So my mom met him in a
Sausage made.
restaurant. He was practicing his golf swing and like almost hit her.
Oh.
And she says, "It's okay, Mr. Barkley. You're the greatest quarterback to play the game."
Oh no!
Who she think I am?
I want to give
Wallet
a shout
Moon?
out.
So that was the inspiration for that story. All right.
Oh, Chuck.
All right, our next one before we move into science is dispute over pay and labor practices ends with Teamsters throwing a hemp brick through window of CBD production facility.
I wish that was true, but that is false as fuck.
That's hilarious.
Okay, you
A
got me.
union
These
Sorry.
are
I'm
good,
gonna make
Jay
a hemp
High.
brick. Oh my
That was
god.
good.
Okay, so
Give me a break. Give me a break.
That's
Without it.
that's hilarious.
Throw it through the window, Holmes.
all right, so for findings or fiction with the cannabis science, I'm going to try something a little bit different. For some of them, I'm going to read what the researchers concluded, and I want you guys to tell me, is that really what these guys said, or is it something again that I just made up feeling goofy? So the study entitled "Smoking Tobacco Along with Marijuana Increases Symptoms of Cannabis Dependence." The researchers concluded part of the study by saying the findings suggest that rather than smoking joints while alone and blunts in groups, the average Harlem South Bronx smoker simply prefers blunts for all occasions.
100% true. I hate to say it's true.
Did researchers actually publish that?
Researchers ain't published that, but that's 100% truth about how we like to smoke blunts 100. You feel me, yo?
Oh my god.
It's true, and I bet it was published.
So, according to our favorite journal, the Dad Journal, the Journal of Drug and Alcohol Dependence, the researchers stated the average smoker in non-poverty areas of Manhattan and East Village, Lower East Side, use joints and pipes and use them while alone.
We know that.
But the average smoker in Harlem, South Bronx uses blunts and uses them while alone, concluding the findings suggest that the quote, Harlem South Bronx smoker simply prefers blunts for all occasion. What's crazy about this research is they sent students out with clipboards looking for people smoking weed on the streets. Like, excuse me, are you smoking a blunt right now? Do you share that with people? Did you throw in on that? Like, went through this
What's your name?
Oh my God.
Cleavell. And why are you asking?
Come here, y'all. Come here, y'all. What's in your pocket?
Right.
Oh my
Gee
God.
whiz.
Do we call that the absent dad journal? Sorry,
Yeah.
dad joke today. Sorry, I had to.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll get it. You'll
Greer-
get it. No, you'll get it.
That's
She'll
it.
get it.
No, he got it.
I got it. No,
You
that was
missed the
shot.
story. You missed the story.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's a that's
No, that
a
was
yeah.
shot.
Well, motherfucker called me out.
All right.
Damn right.
Yeah,
So
don't
our
fuck with
next
Jan.
study is also about blunts. So in a study entitled Blunts versus Joints, Cannabis Use Characteristics and Consequences, did researchers conclude that African Americans were more likely than any other racial ethnic group to report smoking blunts in the past month due to, at least partially, the aggressive marketing and price promotion of flavored tobacco products in their communities. Is that a real finding or is that fiction?
No, it's
okay,
fake.
wait a second. Is that from Dad again?
No, it's from
Did Dad
absent.
say this?
It's fictional.
But there is an aggressive
of course.
campaign
Of
for
course.
these flavored paper
Paper.
things. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Flavor.
but
I'm just saying it wasn't
Wasn't-
published.
It wasn't published? You guys say no?
I'm gonna say
I'm going to be a contrarian. I'm going to say yes.
I'm gonna say no. It wasn't published.
Once again, this is published by our favorite journal. Researchers concluded, quote,
Boy.
Absent dad.
I
consistent
just can't
with
turn down passion fruit. You know what I mean?
Wait, we need to get these
Oh
guys
my
in here.
God.
What the hell? How did they
serious?
come up with this writing?
So they said the results were quote, consistent with existing literature. African Americans were more likely than any other group to report smoking blunts in the past month. The
I know that
elevated
part.
rates of blunt use are at least partially due to the aggressive marketing and price promotion of products, especially flavored products, that are commonly used to make blunts in communities with high proportions of young adults and African American residents. It's kind of incredible that they're
pretty
able
evil.
to tease that out.
No, I know that's the fact because we see it. I
Sure.
just didn't think it would be
think-
framed in
A scientific way.
Yeah.
Huh.
Good work if you can find it in research.
Can I ask you a question?
They
Who
prefer
are these-
grape.
Who
That's
is
what the finding says. I mean,
who are the editors of this journal?
Those things are published, but you don't know who actually reviewed the study. So they do
Don't
have an
worry.
editorial board. Very few journals
let's
publish.
get them in here.
Because it makes you kind of just wonder.
Okay. So our
Okay,
next
sorry.
next
There I go.
next research headline is this fact or fiction? A retrospective sports study, which means they go back and look at records, right? Retrospective sports study finds a correlation associating game-winning touchdowns with marijuana use. Is this true? Is it a clean hit, or will there be penalties?
I'm gonna say that's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it is.
Because
Yeah.
But it was inspired by a true story. San Antonio Holmes of the Steelers caught a winning, I think it was a Super Bowl pass. And like the month before that, he had failed a drug test, like leading up to the Super Bowl. And we hear a lot about the NFL and things. And so it would be interesting to find out what correlations there were to performance and cannabis use. And all this information would be public. So it would be possible to do it. But yes,
you can't smoke marijuana and play football.
Basketball is a different creature.
Basketball is real smooth and graceful. It got boogie on it. Yeah, it got jazz and
so I mean
blues and shit.
yeah.
The blues when you lose.
Right. But if you smoke a joint, play football, you get your head knocked off.
Yeah,
You're
there you
just
go.
sitting there.
You get your
looking
helmet
at-
knocked off and your head still be in it. Exactly.
What my head at?
You see this helmet?
All right. Next national
Oh,
headline. Is
my
this a
God.
fact or is this fiction? States with more immigrants are more likely to legalize marijuana, study finds. Are we bordering on the truth? Is immigration a significant factor that leads to legalization? States with more immigrants are more likely to legalize marijuana. Is this a finding or is this fiction?
I'm gonna say that's fiction.
Wait.
I don't know. But the way that this government's going and the way
I
they
don't
speak about
know.
immigrants,
I
I
don't
can't
know.
see them doing something like legalizing
The northern-
marijuana when they're saying that they're the cause
I
of
can't see
illegal
it.
drugs coming in.
Right. So
So,
maybe it doesn't.
no.
What do you think,
I don't
Randy?
think.
No.
I don't think so because
States with more immigrants are more likely to legalize marijuana, study finds.
I say yes.
Published in the Journal of Contemporary Drug Problems offers some answers. Researchers looked at each state's marijuana laws, analyzed their political and demographic, economic, and social characteristics to identify various trends associated with legalization. And surprisingly, going against what you might like kind of just think, that was one of their major findings.
Wow.
It's kind of incredible.
Don't make sense.
Well,
Yeah,
it probably
I'm
has
blown
nothing
away
to
with-
do with anything either. You know, it might just be two things that are just happened that really
Yeah,
aren't
like
even related.
like New York, we got a lot of immigrants here, right? I'm
like,
assuming
remember-
California has a lot of immigrants
What
there.
was it? The statistics
where
you
they're
had
talking
about
about
like rainstorm would call. What was it? Some of the
Smoke from wildfires leads to violence.
Remember, we were talking about these kind of spurious relationships that really have nothing to do with each other, but they seem like they do. So maybe that's all that is.
All right.
Sorry.
So this next one is something we've discussed. History of lifetime cannabis use is associated with better cognition and worse real-world functioning in schizophrenia patients. So can cannabis improve cognitive function but make it harder to work, study, and buy pants at an unfamiliar store? Is this research contrived or just controversial? History of lifetime cannabis use associated with better cognition but worse real-world functioning in schizophrenia patients. Is this a real finding, or I just make this?
You just made that up.
That's false.
Because there's a whole bunch
That's
of that's
false.
a bunch of mulch of shit.
Because that's
within-
actually one of the symptoms of schizophrenia.
I don't know about
is-
it.
Right.
Yeah, you
No,
can't do that.
yeah,
No,
did you-
false.
Did you make that up?
As published in the European Addiction
Oh my
Research
God,
Journal.
Fucking Europeans.
today.
So what they found is that there was better working memory and processing
Yeah.
speed associated. I like how they talk about people like
Yeah.
their computers, in these populations of cannabis using. But they found that, what was interesting is that it was not associated with affecting personal and social relationships, nor was it related to
Right.
disturbing and aggressive behavior. But things like showing up to work and studying seemed to be negatively affected according to their survey. So it's kind of this. It's a little hard to wrap your mind around
I
it.
would love to understand that more because that's one of the biggest issues without that happens in schizophrenia in
Is that they can't
general is that they
follow.
can't follow these things.
Exactly.
They
That's
can't
why
do these
I
things.
don't get it.
Yeah, it's
That's
a weird
confusing.
study. It is confusing, and that's why I chose it.
Oh, thank you, buddy.
Right.
But what's important is I think that these are the kind of the good guys in the research field. They're saying, this is not. We're looking at the difference between. And they're starting to create a divide here: cannabis-induced psychosis and just psychosis by itself, saying that this is not necessarily related to cannabis-induced psychosis. They're looking at the condition sort of as a whole
Mhm.
and factors, and saying it's not all the information is bad, but there's some things. Once you know what's wrong, you can develop interventions and education strategies to help people adapt to that. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
The next one is this. Did I make this up, or is this true research? Participants in a remedial driving program for driving under the influence of cannabis were surveyed, and researchers found that the participants basically only trusted information about whether or not cannabis was, safe driving was from other people who use cannabis. Let me try to rephrase that.
Yeah, I know that you just
Um,
confuse the hell out.
So.
I know exactly what you mean, though.
Among
know
the
what you mean, too.
participants in the remedial driving survey,
Mhm.
based on survey data, the researchers found that participants were generally seen as more accepting of driving
Mhm.
while under cannabis than their family, and responses from participants indicated that the opinions of others who use cannabis were regarded as more credible than the opinions of those who do not use cannabis, leading researchers to believe that there's a bias, something like if you're looking for cannabis information and someone has never used it, they're less likely to believe that person. Is this a real research finding, or did I just make it up because it sounds believable?
It's real.
Are we on the road to enlightenment, or are we driving up the wrong side of the street?
I say it's fake. You're the tiebreaker.
Think
Greer.
about
All on you, Greer.
I
You make the
understand,
right
like-
decision, buddy.
and somebody who's gonna judge,
Right. Right, but that's just it. Like there could be factual. There's factual shit in there, but
Yeah.
it could be bullshit. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go with you on that.
Well, this was published in Drug and Alcohol Review, a study entitled Exploring Perceptions Among People Who Drive After Cannabis Use. And they looked at what these biases and influences are that contribute to perceived risks of certain behavior. Yeah. All right.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Do you guys feel like you're getting smarter when we do these shows?
It's definitely confirming shit that I had, feelings about that. I had no idea there was factual.
I love these little things because they're really kind of real world bits of information that we need to be talking about.
All right. I have 2 left for science, and then we're going to open the floor if there's time for questions. But our next research headline, is this fact or is this fiction? CBD, cannabidiol, has been shown to protect the heart from damage due to the chemotherapeutic agent doxorubicin. Has CBD been shown to protect the heart from damage due to the chemotherapeutic agent doxorubicin? It's a very common chemotherapeutic agent. It has some cardiovascular effects. Did people look at CBD to see if it could protect the heart?
It almost sounds like that product has CBD in it.
The
doxorubicin.
What? That's a chemo. That's a chemo treatment.
Right, but so then what? So what does CBD have to do with that?
Well, I'm just thinking there's not enough. I don't know enough patients that have been using CBD that suffer from,
Right.
So,
yeah.
I'll go with false.
So once again, I've blended fact and fiction here. In a study with rats, administered the terpene beta-caryophyllene, which is the most abundant terpene on cannabis, stimulates CB2 receptors, much like THC does, and it protected the hearts of these rats from the effects of this chemotherapy agent. So it wasn't CBD, but it was a terpene on the cannabis plant that they looked at.
So how long would that take to actually
start to
or really humans? Transfer to human?
Well, the great thing about it is
testing.
Beta-caryophyllene, it's found in black pepper and a lot of other things, is grasped by the FDA. It's generally regarded as safe. You can buy it. There's no legal restrictions. I'm not saying people should go out and start huffing it or anything like that.
Huffing what? Black pepper?
That's good.
Got that pepper, y'all.
Yes, I caution against that. But in the Journal of Chemical and Biological Interactions, they published this study. But it is interesting.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
It's getting that time.
All right, our last one. In the UK, researchers have stated that reclassifying cannabis-based drugs has not made accessing them easier.
Oh, I would agree with that.
All day.
All day?
Yeah.
Reclassifying cannabis has not made it easier to access it.
Access it.
No.
According to medical professionals in a research journal, they have stated that the reclassification of cannabis has not actually made them easier to get, according to the British Medical Journal. There's, while it is, being reclassified and looked at, it hasn't made it any easier for people to get these products.
So what's the classification over there now?
I'd have to look it up to be precise. I know they have a different scheduling system. I don't know.
We do, yeah.
But it was downgraded when David Nutt, who's actually a very brilliant researcher, he was on their advisory.
What's his name?
Dr. David Nutt.
Wait, can you say that without laughing?
David Nutt.
Yeah,
Hi.
So he's
excuse me, can you find David Nutt for me? I need to talk to David.
So
Nutt.
yeah,
I'm looking for nuts.
Is Mr. Nutt here?
So of course, when he was working on
David
the Drug
Harry
Advisory Commission,
Really?
My birth name.
you guys sound like the Daily Beast when he reclassified cannabis. They were all over Dr. Nutt reclassifying cannabis like all day long.
Poor man.
What's even funny is I have friends who work for him, so they
Junior.
Guy, you serious?
yes, that did like their PhD at his lab and stuff. But he was a really aggressive drug reformer from a scientific place, and he used statistics because people talked about brain damage from ecstasy, and he'd straight up be like, "You're more likely to get a head injury from polo than you are from using MDMA," and would like throw this stuff at them all day
respect that
long.
Nut.
And that's why I don't play polo.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
All right. Well, we got about 6 minutes left before they kick us out of here.
I might
Let's get an overtime. It's getting good now.
I know.
This is getting fun.
That's the name of our next show.
It's getting good.
That's the name of our next show. Overtime.
There you go.
So what else you guys want to talk about?
Don't you have one
we
more?
do.
Yeah, one more.
I know he's frustrated.
Oh, you guys want one
It's
more?
just brilliant. I like it.
All right.
He is Dr. J after all.
Dig it.
All right. Is this a true? We'll go back to the headlines. Is this a true headline or not? The CBD gold rush has begun. Suddenly, CBD is everywhere.
True.
So Jan says true. Why do you say it's true?
A true headline?
Because we are walking. I'm not because
it
he's
is.
shaking my head. No, but he's shaking it. Yeah. Because
It
we're
is.
walking down the street and there are these places everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, like boutiques selling CBD. It's crazy. It's like it's the new health fad.
Now, see, and
I
this-
think it's cheapening this, to be quite honest
Hey,
with
yo, dude, I'm gonna say, that's I don't know, just something about the way he
or-
says it. It's like I think I can figure out what he's bullshitting.
Teach us his tricks, Claire.
Oh,
Teach us his
man.
tricks.
That
I mean, you are
that
seeing
should
it
be a
every
real
day.
It
headline.
is
So,
everywhere.
That should be a real headline.
But you're saying
But it's not.
But
But
it
it
should
is.
be.
Should be a real headline,
mean-
but it's not.
I think we.
According to CNN, suddenly
Yes.
CBD is everywhere.
Boom.
It's the start of the CBD gold rush.
You know
Okay.
what? Hold on. We have to do a special shout out right now to Ron Shapira
Oh.
because Ron has bequeathed some of these to us. He sends these great.
Hey, can
What,
we go and
questions?
start?
to
Can
it.
we?
I know we need to have Ron
Can you
on
test
here.
any of these? Do you have the ability to test these oils and see if there's CBD in them or not?
I mean, There are labs that will do that for you,
Yes.
and you can, yeah.
Mm.
I mean, we
We
did
need
it.
to. We need to do that. We need to get a fucking detective agency together, Jack.
Maybe.
or just read body language.
All right.
But you know what?
Try that.
You bring up a good point because most of the studies are only on products you can buy online. No one's done the brick and mortar study yet. It's something we've been discussing. Is go to
Don't
these
look in my
places.
back pocket, officer.
What the fuck is that? Oh my god. Oh, I get it
There you
now.
go.
Sorry. Okay, I'm a slow one today. Anywho, you know we have a thing on Patreon, don't you?
Is that thing still going on?
Yeah, it's still going on. So we need support, people.
Oh,
So we are asking
right.
people to be the first one. We need a virgin who is not a Patreon supporter because we don't even have our first fucking supporter yet on Patreon.
What?
I know.
We should
People
probably
love
be the
us.
first 4
We're all
months.
doing this for the kindness of our hearts. No one's making any money. And we do need the kindness of your support to help making sure we can do this every week. So patreon.com/New Hemp Times. You can pledge $1. That's all we need.
Or
We
a
just want to
million.
know that, or $1 million.
Or a million.
We will take that. But
Right.
anyway, we have some really cool stuff in the future for us with New Hemp Times. And we've talked about adding some certain kinds of components that we're excited about, but we can't do it if we don't have the funds
Yeah.
to do it. So if you guys, seriously, if you want to support this as we kind of expand our mission to change the conversation
That's
around
right.
cannabis into therapeutic use and how we can actually debunk some of the bullshit out there, please contribute to us because we are not supported through industry. We are supported from people like you. So
Yep.
I just did my PBS.
There it is.
Yeah.
That sounded like
That was
it.
good.
Might get
It was
sued
good.
for
Yeah.
that.
So anyway, so please be the virgin and be the first person at least, so that maybe another person can do it, or better yet, all of you run to your computer now and make this pledge.
Hey.
Yeah, because right now our graphics is consisted of us saying, "Hey, who can draw a picture of a tincture and show it to the camera?" So we'd like to get some professional work done.
Yes,
some
yes,
segments.
yes, yes,
This
yes.
is a crowdsourcing project. It's
And
a labor of love.
This is
for a lot of
also
us.
a way for all of us to see some talented talents that we have here, explore some additional ideas that we have for
Hey.
it. How, like in
Oh, we could
Karate
expand this
sandwich.
thing. Hey.
we could
Yeah.
see Jahan and Greer fight Ronda Rousey, or
I've already been beat up by a woman plenty of times.
Yeah, me
I-
too.
I don't-
I'm good.
I'm good.
I have my servant.
Right.
oh my god.
I'd rather fight Mike Tyson at this
Yeah,
point.
dig it. In his prime.
Yeah.
Oh,
For real.
I love you guys.
Because he's not going to break your arm.
No,
He
he'll just knock you out.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
Rhonda snaps something, and 3 weeks later you're still
hurt.
Yeah, because she does stuff on WWE. I'm like, that looked like it hurt. Like, you know. Don't,
Oh man. All right.
I'm just hoping I'm faster than she is.
Yeah.
Running.
Okay, so we'll do another
away.
skit.
Yeah.
But anyway.
My foot.
All right.
I know.
So, any last parting words for any of us today?
I would say same Hemp Time, same Hemp channel.
There it
See
is.
you guys next week. Post your questions, comments, clarifications. Check out our show notes on iTunes. We'll post a lot of the links to the crazy, weird-ass stuff we've talked about today, including a really interesting report from the Minority Cannabis Business Association that I shared with you all. We didn't have a chance to discuss, but it is super cool. Check it out. Any closing remarks, sir?
No.
Good.
Yeah.
He's
Thanks
a
for
man
listening.
of lots of words. Love it, love it, love it. I'm looking forward to it, guys. Thank you all. Thank
Be
you so
kind to
much.
everyone.
Yep.
Nice.
Stay
Yeah, that's a
safe,
good
y'all.
one.
All right. Adios.
Adios.
Adios,
good one.
amigo.
Well done
That was
today,
good.
guys.